はい、それではお時間になりましたので、これよりセッションの方を開始いたします。本日最後のセッションになります。トマシュ・ゴジクさんによるスカラの開発者ツールエコシステムです。どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。
Hi everyone. First off, I want to give a shout out to the translators. It's really hard work, so thank you. But yeah, but let's start about tooling. So my talk is about the Scala tooling ecosystem. I'll explain what I mean in a bit. My name is Tomasz Godzik. I work at Virtus Lab as a senior Scala developer. Virtus Lab is a company in Krakow, in Poland. And I'm also a team lead for the Scala ecosystem team. So a team in Virtus Lab that deals with open source, any tools in that open source that need tending to. Obviously, we can tend to all these tools, but we try to put out some fires here and there. And most of my career, I've been working with open source tooling and tooling general. For open source tooling, I've been working 5 years, and on tooling general, I think around 8. Okay, I don't have a lot of time, so let's start with my goals for this talk. So first of all, I want to show you the full scope of the Scala tooling ecosystem. Scratch that. I can't actually show you the full picture of the Scala ecosystem. Turns out 20 minutes is not enough, but I will try to show you some parts of it that I find interesting. And using that, show you that there's tools that you can use to improve your workspace, to improve your workflow, and generally have a better development experience. So give you some confidence. But if I can't give you any confidence, at least I will show you some nice features. Okay, let's start with the main part. First of all, what actually is a tool? For the purpose of this talk, I decided that anything that doesn't ship with your code is actually a tool. I didn't include the testing frameworks because that would be way too much for me to talk about. I couldn't, unfortunately, I didn't manage to cover every tool I wanted. So there's, I think, about 8 main ones. As you can see, there's some logos of potential tools that you can take a look at. I'll also have a list later on. And for each tool that I will mention, I did 3 slides. First of all, what is that tool actually? Why you might want to use that specific tool. Then the second part, what is that tool actually? And the last part will be what features there are worth mentioning. Let's start with a tool. So let's say you want a better IDE experience. You want to use any editor there is. You want to have direct information from the Scala 2 and Scala 3 compiler. You maybe want to use all the Scala 3 features right from the start. So for that, you would want to use Metals. It's one of the main projects I work on. It's a language server for the Scala programming language. It's available to use in any editor that you can use with LSP. LSP is a specification that allows us to make backend and frontend different things. So backend will be the language server that gives you information about Scala language, and editor will just present that using the information that we give to the editor. And there's some nice features. We've been doing a lot of nice work there. For example, if you use Bazel, we released and we improved over the last few releases Bazel support in Metal so that it works much nicer than it was at the start, and it works at all. We also attained feature parity between Scala 2 and 3. So all the features in Scala 2 and 3 are the same. We also did really nice work, not me specifically, it was my colleague Kasia. She did implement a way to find implementations within your dependency. So you can search, for example, inside some trait, you can check all the methods that implement methods in that trait inside your dependencies. That was already available for your main workspace, but it's now also possible to do within your dependencies. We also change our custom way of showing artificial data, like type decorations or showing implicits, where implicits are actually passed. So this kind of virtual way to present you information. We switch from our own custom protocol to inlay hints, which is part of the main LSP spec, which works much nicer and works in all the possible editors that support inlay hints. We are also working on making sure that even if your workspace is not perfectly compilable, there's a bunch of issues, for example, we will still try to make sure that metals work. Part of that was already merged for Scala 2. There's also a solution coming for Scala 3, which hopefully will be even better than the Scala 2 solution. And we're also working on bring some opt-in telemetry so that you can, if you want, you can send us information, automatic information about crashes, stuff like that. So that will be hopefully soon when I can make it cross the finish line. Okay, another tool you might want to use is something to manage and find your dependencies. And in Scala community, that is Coursier. It's both a library and a command line tool for managing, caching, downloading artifacts. There's much more you can do. You should check out its website. But some nice features I really like are, for example, searching dependencies. You can use the complete dep command to, for example, check what organizations are available on Maven Central, maybe what artifacts within those organizations you can use and what versions they are. So you can check everything. It's very useful. And it can be done from the library or from the command line. And you can also, if you don't want to invest into package managers, you can use Coursier as a simple package manager by adding your application to the Coursier apps repository on GitHub. And last, but certainly not least, if you want to use Coursier in your code base, in your tools, you can use the Java API, which makes sure that everything is shaded. So any Scala dependencies are isolated from the main code you have. You can use any version you want of Scala, and if there will not be any jar dependency hell. Next tool that you might want, which is sometimes for somebody obvious, but for some people might not be, is to have a tool that automatically formats your code to be unified across your teams so that nobody argues about specific spaces or new lines. And for sure, you want something that is integrated in most of existing Scala tooling. And maybe you want to experiment with different styles. For that, you can use Scala format. Scala format is a configurable formatter that changes your code to and applies certain rules to make sure that the code looks nice. Some nice features that you might want to check out is, for example, there's an easy way to rewrite your code to use optional braces or even fewer braces, so drop all the braces. It can also, for those cases, automatically add end markers if your blocks of code are longer than a certain limit. And you can also experiment with a really wide choice of settings. You can check the website. There's nice examples of before and after that you can use. Another really useful tool could be something to keep your dependencies up to date and limit tech debt, because it's much easier to do small bumps of dependencies than do a bump every year and just try to update everything, and everything will blow up. So it's much easier to have a bot, Scala Steward, that will do it. It's both a tool and a bot that can automatically update dependencies within Maven, SBT, Mail, and Scala CLI projects. And some new things, relatively new, you can use it for Scala CLI. You saw on the previous presentations that there's those using directives. They can be automatically updated by Scala Steward. If you want, you can add your repository to our public instance at Virtus Labs / Scala Steward repositories, and we'll be running Scala Steward on our own infrastructure, or you can use independently GitHub Actions. It's very simple to set up and have that bot running for you. Let's delve into some more complex tools. For some people who, for example, work on tooling, such as me, it might be useful to parse or generate Scala code. It might also be useful to get type information outside the compiler so I can do something later. And for that, you can use the Scala Meta project. This is actually two things. First of all, is the compiler independent parser that you can use with different dialects for Scala 2, Scala 3, 2.13, and make sure that any code that you parse and print out is consistent with that Scala version. And there's the second thing, there's a semantic DB plugin. Semantic DB is type information that can be printed from the Scala compiler into a protobuf format. That's only for Scala 2 in the codebase, because Scala 3 has it behind a flag inside the compiler itself. Some useful things, if you want to learn about parser, AST Explorer has an option that uses Scala Meta, because Scala Meta is also published for Scala.js and Scala Native, and it might help you understand how code is parsed. There's obviously a lot of tools that use Scala Meta, for example, Scala Format, which I mentioned before. And soon it will also be compiled with Scala 3. It's currently on 2.13. You can use it from Scala 3, but some nice features like quasi-quotes will not work. I will not delve into quasi-quotes. You can ask me later what that is. Okay, so talking about improving your code base. So one thing you might want to do to make your life better and lives of your team members better is having something to automatically detect some common bugs, and maybe you want to add some non-standard warnings linting to your code base. For that, you can use Word Remover, which is both working for Scala 2 and 3, and it's a compiler plugin that provides a number of additional linting options, and you can also define your own options if there's use cases inside your code base that are not standard. Some nice features, as I said, you can create those specific to your use case linting options. The API itself is compiler-based, or it's exactly the same as compiler. I don't remember exactly now. But if you don't want to delve into that, you can also use the existing linting options, and there's plenty of them. Okay, another thing that might improve your code base and maybe automatically refactor it is Scala Fix. So Scala Fix is a tool to automatically, as I said, refactor and also lint your code base. There's some nice features. For example, it can automatically add types for Scala to improve your compilation speed, because if you have types, then the compiler the pipelining might work much faster, things like that. Pipelining will be tomorrow. Jamie will be talking about that. And the API is, I think, much simpler. It doesn't use the compiler API. It uses the parser and the semantic DB information. Okay, something interesting that was mentioned. So you maybe want to write scripts or simple applications or experiment with things. And for that, you would use Scala CLI, as was mentioned many times before. It's a, if somebody doesn't know already, it's a command line tool that you can use for compiling, running, testing, packaging your Scala code, and much more. There's actually a lot of power options and experimental options. There's we've put a lot of documentation there. It's probably not as good as Laravel, but still I feel like it's pretty good. There's a lot of features that you can use. So there's the ability to add shebang at start, so you don't have to write every time Scala CLI and the name of the script. Then if you add the shebang, you can just invoke the script. You can easily compile for Scala native and native image. You can compile snippets within Markdown files. You can experiment with ScalaPy and Spark, mentioned previously. And soon it will be the default Scala runner. So whenever you run Scala, install Scala, it would run Scala CLI. But if you don't want to do things on your physical machine, or maybe you want to share your experiments, have some additional interactive docs, you might want to use Scasti. And it's an online web environment where you can write your code, run it, and share it. And it's really amazing. There's some nice features it has. So if you want to inspect types, you can hover over them. You'll get completions like in IDE when writing. You can also embed your Scasti examples in your docs. That's also possible. And recently, there's been adding that 3-seater support, which is shows much better syntax highlight, much better colors, you could say, inside of the code. And there will also be a Scala CLI support coming. Okay, let's say another tool you might want to use is something that to type check your documentation, maybe add some interactive features to that documentation, or you might want to write worksheets. Seems different, but it's exactly the same case. And for that, you can use mdoc. mdoc is a library for compiling and running Scala snippets in the docs, in Markdown files, or outside in worksheets. So it's both used for documentation and for worksheets in metals, for example. And some nice features. First of all, if you have documentation and use mdoc, you will always make sure that all your snippets work. So if you change something inside your code in your library, it will be automatically checked if you use mdoc. Or if you, for example, have a library and want to a simple way of showing a static website, you can use mdoc with Docusaurus, which we use in a lot of places, and there's plenty of examples in the Scala Meta organization. Last but certainly not least, if you want to write scripts or some CI automation, then you will probably want to have more than just the minimal standard library. You want some additional libraries, such as things for JSONs, things for writing, reading files. And if you want that, you can use Scala Toolkit. Scala Toolkit is basically a set of libraries that we recommend to use, and those also support all the possible Scala versions and platform configurations. Some nice features, as I said, it is very useful for writing simple scripts, for running automation on your CI. I know of, I talked recently with Matthew from JetBrains, and he was doing automation of packaging the Scala plugin into IntelliJ using Scala CLI, and he finished it, and it gave him a lot of much more fun than he would have from a bash script. There's also other toolkits you can try out. So the type level toolkit will add the functional flavor to your code. In Scala CLI, it's very simple to use it. You just write this using directive. It's using toolkit default. And other tools will have to add this as a separate artifact. It's basically artifact that transitively depends on all those libraries and brings them to you via the command or by depending on it. As I said, I couldn't really add everything. There's plenty of tools. Yeah, I couldn't really, but one thing you could get from it is that please report issues if you have any with those tools. If you want, we can organize sprees so that we can try online sprees and or knowledge shares to try to fix things or learn about things. But remember, any feedback really is useful. Write to us, write any way you think is sensible. And that's my talk. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you again for the translators. And you can reach me out there. There's our Scala free roadmap, things we plan to do. And there's this presentation on the right under the QR code. Thank you very much.
ありがとうございます。先ほどのセッションと合わせましても、すごい幅広く知識を得られる機会になったんじゃないかなと思っております。では、質疑応答の方に移らさせていただきます。質問がある方については、挙手の方をお願いいたします。
If nobody has any questions, we can go have drinks.
そうですね、最後のセッションなので。はい。この後、懇親会もありますので、そちらの方でもいろいろとお話は聞けるかなとは思っております。では、ちょっと皆さん、もう飲みたいような気持ちになっているのかなと思いますので、セッションの方はこれにて一旦終了させていただきたいと思います。発表の方ありがとうございました。